Hello and welcome to episode number 16 of the Belair podcast. Today's guest is a smart city designer and cooperative artist from the New York City area. He's currently CEO of AnyShare, which is the first completely cooperative business in the US. AnyShare lets anyone start their custom version of Uber, Airbnb, or any other type of exchange network in under a minute. He is also the technology manager at Arcosanti, an experimental micro-city and urban laboratory in the desert of Arizona. He has led elite teams in solving complex collaboration and resource allocation problems. He is certified in over 35 creative softwares and management methodologies. He develops group and community capacity to co-create visions of the greatest good to speed up our shift to a peaceful planetary civilization. Welcome to the show, my friend, Rob Jameson.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, dude. It's my favorite part of your bio, and I always, when I'm reading through them, it's a challenge because I can't make the words any bigger on this note. I should sort that out so that it's more easily read. But the last section, he develops group and community capacity to co-create visions of the greatest good to speed up our shift to a peaceful planetary civilization. And so, most people, obviously, they don't know you. So fill them in a little bit on your background because you do a lot of amazing things. You're extremely diverse and talented. So maybe just start with a little intro about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. So background, I started working primarily in different realms of psychology and neuroscience and neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis. I think that was like it's a very exciting time when things like some of these fields were starting to really get mainstream popularity, and Tony Robbins and Stephen Covey and the NLP folks and all this started to get it started to get to the point where people that were like me, not majoring or not having a doctorate or a master's in psychology, could kind of teach ourselves to understand how the mind works on a much deeper level. And from there, I started to go into Buddhism and to kind of move beyond yourself ways of thinking. And eventually I came full circle and I realized for myself, although I've done a lot of inner work, I've done a lot of work on removing myself, really the art of communication, the art of using these tools and technologies of today through marketing to reach people, I could have a lot of impact, and it would actually make me feel that same kind of, it makes me feel that same feeling of connection that I could get through meditation, but it's through a group activity and it's using anything from art or even a Twitter contest or a network to connect people together. So in a nutshell, I went from inner psychology to spirituality, mysticism, to marketing. And then after that, I became fascinated in networks. I designed AnyShare with a small team. And the idea is that there is abundance around us all the time. It's this kind of spiritual realization. But what we do is we itemize all of those different needs and resources, and then we have a means for people to self-organize to help them get what they need more effectively from their network. And also what I do now is I'm the technology manager of Arcosanti. Arcosanti was an experimental micro-city designed by Paolo Soleri starting in the early 70s, and has been built by about 7,000 volunteers. And here what I'm doing is I manage the information department. So I'm looking at all different ways of using everything like data from Internet of Things devices, so measuring utilities and how we're consuming resources, all the way through to much softer stuff like identifying hidden skills, hidden dreams within people, and then putting them all together so that we can become more aware collectively of what we actually have, and then find ways to synergize and create more with less. And that's probably a good overview.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, we met, it's a lot of stuff. Like the more I get to know you, the more I just found you extremely interesting and diverse because you're extremely smart at tech, right? And then you're managing Arcosanti, and then this huge thing with AnyShare. The idea behind AnyShare is so clever. No one's really put it together that way before. Do you kind of want to like explain a little bit about what that is and where you are with the development in that and where people can get involved? Because the way that I kind of saw and the way that I see it is like, when you have a small community, like Arco Santi, right? It's very prevalent and obvious that if somebody has a skill or something, you might need them to, I don't know, set something up for you or handle the wood or, what I mean, do the gardening because they're good at it. Or, you have this very small community. So not everybody's good at everything. So you are aware of who is good at what and you kind of lean on each other. So if
Yes.
we could kind of scale that out, and then, for me, if I'm good at marketing and I can help somebody in tech and they're like, I have a really good tech idea and they're like, I don't know how to market it. I'm like, dude, I can market that for you. And if we can find a synergy in that, just as one small example, we can build it together and be like, oh, this situation feels right. This one doesn't. And you can kind of post them. You can post your skills and then you can post your needs. And it's really interesting.
Absolutely. So I think it's obvious that people that are fluent in the web, that there's different technologies that are going deeper than we've ever gone before and itemizing all the value that we have around us. So like Airbnb is a great example. These people have a spare room. The room gets used for 1 hour per week. Maybe I could flip that and get $1,000 per month. The kind of the way that this is evolving, however, is that the means to identify all those resources is controlled by Silicon Valley and Silicon Alley corporations, and the bottom line is making profit, and it's not making a commons whereby people can access what they need more effectively. It's more about keeping the information siloed, keeping the organizing of the people that are giving those things siloed, and then extracting profit in ways that are kind of win-win. It's not trying to take all the money out of the person's hand, but ultimately, I think there's a new evolution that's happening. It's called platform cooperativism. It's a buzzword in these circles now. And the idea is that if a cooperative actually owned the platforms that are generating this data and this awareness of all the resources that actually exist around us, then it can really be steered for the greatest good. And to give a bit of history, I began this about 10 years ago. And what I did was I mapped out the information architecture, meaning like the flow paths of maybe over 100 peer-to-peer websites. So Web 2.0 websites where people are generating their own content and uploading it, and they have a profiles like Facebook and MySpace, but way more. And after a while, you start to see trends, and you realize that based on how the architecture of an online space, just like how the architecture of a physical space is designed, there will be certain outcomes, and those outcomes might be creating more harmony or more potential, or they might be squandering it and creating more friction, or they might be keeping people separate or allowing new ideas. And I became very interested in understanding how one could set up the context for collaboration so that if a whole bunch of input came, how can we all reap the benefits? And so about 10 years ago, the project was called Mass Mosaic, and the idea was to create a kind of Wikipedia for all the needs and resources in the world. And from there, we developed the very, very beginning of an algorithm which would match what people want and what people have. That way we could say, let's say I don't just want to buy and sell everything. I want to barter, gift, share, collaborate, remix, reuse, trade, all this. I'm open to all these different ways. What's the path of least resistance? But in that process, we learned that trying to start with the meta, with this massive Wikipedia thing, is too hard to get density, because still, although we work online, many people exchange primarily in person in the real world. And so AnyShare is kind of the evolution of that, where we're focusing on specific niches, on specific locations. It can be worldwide if the person wants, but it's up to an individual to say, this is the thing that I want to have everyone collect what they want and what they have around. So it could be dog walking in New York City, or personal transformation in Austin, or it could be fans of an artist that are worldwide, but it's up to the individual to choose the niche. Then it's fully functional right now in that you can go to anyshare.coop, so anyshare.coop. You can create an account, and from there, create any sort of topic that you want to organize needs and resources around, list them out. We let people list them out in every way that they can exchange them. So rather than just saying this is for gifting, which is what Burning Man does to try and be, I guess, like a polarization of capitalism, or say this is only for trading, this is only for borrowing, we say let's look at how people throughout the course of history have actually exchanged with each other, give every one of those options, and then just see, it's like water, right? It's like once we have a source, how can we make it as easy as possible for whoever to drink from that source? One thing I'll say too is in the process of going from Mass Mosaic to AnyShare, we asked the question, and it's a great question. If we had to start over from scratch, how would we do it? If we had to scrap everything. And one of the things that we realized was on the most fundamental level, ownership and who calls the shots and who gets to say who keeps the money is something that we know is where every other company that's tried to do this has failed. Not only failed in that maybe they had intentions that were impure, but even not planning in for a system that once it gets bigger and bigger, it removes the potential for corruption from the picture at the outset. So that began about a year-long process to, as you said, become the first completely cooperative business in the country. Basically, my partner and I worked with a team of lawyers in the UK who had designed a system called Fair Shares, which is a multi-stakeholder cooperative model. We found a way to make it relevant legal and relevant for us as a VC-backed tech company, and worked to adapt it for the United States. And now, although we have not started to formally announce AnyShare, we have figured out the foundation for, as we create all these resources, how it can be commonly owned, commonly steered, benefit the people financially, even the ones that aren't exchanging, just the ones that were involved in some capacity. So I'm very excited to continue to teach people how these kind of business structures, it's kind of like, you set it and forget it sort of deal, one of those things, like where you're not going to be rereading your bylaws once per month. So that's why it's really important you get the blueprint right from the beginning, and then you can go into the parts that will actually make your business sustainable, like how are you going to make money, how are you going to grow in the marketplace, and all that stuff.
Right, man. Yeah, that's amazing. And it's such obviously if you're the first one who's done it, like considering how can this be, in every single way, a group collective. And,
Yes.
You're establishing it right from the get-go. And by leading by that example, it's going to inspire a lot of other businesses beyond what it'll be able to do. Like, from my understanding of it, like I can see the scale, and you understand because you dissected it and see it way deeper. And from what I see of crowdfunding, and that's how we connected on your first Mass Mosaic, I needed help with getting my Zen Athlete site done. So I went to a Burners site because burning is all about gifting, and they have the resources. So you can, you figure out a fair exchange, right? You want to do that. So they sent me to your website, and you build it in exchange for crowdfunding, in the future. And now here we are, which is crazy. But with crowdfunding, like, this is putting the power back in the hands of the people. If you've got a good idea and you make great rewards, so say it's a clean water device for your home, or a interior, those garden towers or something good, and you're like, I need $100,000, right? So the first, you give discounts and you give really cool rewards, and then you give experience rewards, and you make it really good, and then you get it out to the people the best way you know how. And ideally look into marketing. Tim Ferriss wrote something really well on it, really good on it. It's in bold. There's a crowdfunding book as well, but it levels a playing field, right? And it allows the people to decide and actually come together and like, this is a good and conscious idea, and that's what's going to start to rise to the top. So you're just leveling up on that quite a bit, which is amazing.
Totally. And that brings up two things. First of all, you're absolutely right. The power of crowdfunding, it's like, to me, it's almost like, they say the world is your mirror, right? And when you put something out with the right intentions and you have done enough research to articulate it properly and you know the needs in the market, crowdfunding is a great way to mirror back if there actually is a need that's substantial enough for you to continue to invest in your energy. I find that, a lot of people that are quote unquote entrepreneurs are very inspired on the dream realm, but when it comes to making tough business decisions that will say we have to pivot how the company is going because it's not sustainable financially, it will be hard for them to do because the idea in the ideal world is perfect, but the market gives feedback as to whether it's viable and how needed it is. So it is a really great mirror. But the second thing is really exciting, which is equity crowdfunding, which I know in Canada just started fairly recently, about 6 months before the United States. And for anyone that is listening to this and is not familiar, equity crowdfunding is just like what Matt's saying with crowdfunding, except instead of giving money for a reward, you give money for equity. And the benefit of the equity thing is that, one, the person that's doing the crowdfunding isn't going to have to go and fulfill a bunch of trinkets and things like this, or there's not like maybe a multi-month follow-up in terms of delivering some sort of product. And the big advantage is that the person is now invested for life in your business. As a shareholder in your company, 10 years from now, they're still invested in driving business your way because ultimately they'll get dividends based off of the percentage that they own. And I was reading recently, it said that equity crowdfunding, so it became legal in the US on Halloween of last year, but it started actually becoming practice in the beginning of 2016. And they already are saying that it is going to raise more money through investment than all venture capitalists will invest in the US for 2016. Which is insane that giving the power to the people, there's now this massive new stakeholder class who's looking to give micro investments, right? We're not trying to give $30 million, we're trying to give $5,000. And also people have different priorities. It's not like I want to see my company listed on the stock exchange and then I want to be able to get a yacht. I might be invested in through equity crowdfunding because I want to get, trickle back dividends, and more than that, it puts me as a membership in the cooperative, which gives me 3 nights per year free at a hotel on their property, or whatever the case may be. But there's this long-term relationship now. It's exciting to think about where it could go.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. Well, I remember before we got on here, I was like, give me a list of like some stuff that you want to talk about, because what is a lot of it, when you get into augmented reality and tech, I don't even know what's going on there, but you're doing some interesting things at Arco Santi in the tech space. But one of the things I might have more of an understanding is when you wrote something around guiding groups to have collective awakenings, tipping points.
Yes.
So can you talk about that? Because I know that working within and I visited Arco Santi with you. I was there. Arco Santi is amazing. It's so interesting. You're sleeping underneath the stars. It's so beautiful and so magical. I considered, I'm in Canada, now I'm in the middle of the desert in Arizona. I was like, am I going to stay here? I'm like, no, I can't stay here. I was like, but think about it for a second. Like, this is really good. And it's just a simple setup, but you have, it's a little bit what a lot of people are doing. They're trying to buy land and build these sustainable communities. There's a lot of challenges with sustainable communities, but there's a lot of good as well. You come together, and it's like, if I can have my food, water, and shelter taken care of, basic needs, and ideally, the ability to thrive, that's the outcome, to thrive. But the complete opposite, working 60 hours a week to drive a Mercedes, to hate your life, to be out of shape, to eat crappy food. I will go for, figuring out how to thrive while I live in a tent outside in nature, good people, right? Because it really hits the fundamentals, and then from there you can grow. So you're noticing a lot about group dynamics and just so much stuff by being in that space and seeing all that. So I guess, the question is, tell me more about the group awakenings, because I love that.
Totally. And I'll just contextualize the question a little, and thank you for asking this. There's the kind of group awakening that can happen in an event, right? Like I think you had referenced Tony Robbins' "I'm Not a Guru" video that came out on Netflix in your last podcast, and he's a good example of someone that can take a group of people in a room, and it's almost like a stadium energy, and create a group awakening. And that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here, although principles overlap, what I'm talking about here is actually long-term sustained awakening, a state of continuously reawakening. And like you're saying, Arcosanti is a really interesting case study for this. The word utopia is discouraged because it implies it being stagnant, but this place has been called an attempt at creating a utopia. And it's also identified as an urban laboratory, so we experiment on a daily basis. And literally what I'm in right now is part of the experiment for how that kind of awakening can be happening. And so to answer your question, actually, one more precursor. This is not something that Arcosanti has achieved. There is not a critical mass of people that are constantly having awakening experiences here, but there has been moments that have lasted for a week or two where it's kind of like everyone's just on cloud nine. And from that, I've dissected what were the elements that were needed and what were the tipping points that happened, and I'll list them off here. So first thing, obviously, is you need the group to have their base needs met. And that was the first thing you said, like, where's your food coming from? Where's your water coming from? Where's your shelter coming from? If you're stressing about being able to afford your next meal, you're not going to be adding to this collective awakening experience. Next thing is you have to have a strong commons. So one step beyond your needs are these kind of commonly held resources. And it's kind of like no one and everyone owns them at the same time, but it's just like saying, like, as a person, I have needs to self-actualize. So yeah, it's great to have food, but for the parts of me that needs to grow and wants to explore, I want access to things in my periphery to do that. What starts to happen with a group of people after base needs are met and there's a strong commons is what I call the my body, city body consciousness phase, which is where you start to identify, you can start to think transpersonally. You start to say, I'm an individual, great, you're an individual, awesome, but collectively, we're also one individual. So when you're upset and you're sitting next to me in the cafe over breakfast, that makes me a little upset. Therefore, the dualism, the other becomes transcended. And in community, I could talk a lot about this one, but it's actually fairly difficult to get past this phase or get fully into this phase, because even within community where everything seems great, there will often be the person that doesn't seem to fit, right? There will be the person that's just here temporarily and they're probably in transition or something like that. And this phase assumes moving kind of through that, even to say, if you're here, you're the right person and you'll be treated with openness and you'll be treated as if you're one of us, not saying us as in us and other, but you'll be treated as one of us. There will be no exclusion. After that comes autonomy and participation, and this is where Arcosanti is getting into now, which is basically saying, people that are familiar with meritocracies will understand this very quickly, which is saying there's a problem, there is no other who's going to deal with it, we're going to deal with it, and based on interest level and passion and skill set, the group will self-organize to meet that need. And then that's where this kind of, once you're at that phase, that's where this kind of sustained group transcendence really begins to happen. Because now you have a circumstance where a group of people is not relying on a hierarchy, where there's a decision maker up top and they're delegating down, and there's the people that are the workers that are just simply executing and not thinking. Everyone is an autonomous agent. Everyone is tapped into the needs of the collective, and everyone, based on their desire to either learn something new or fulfill their purpose, meaning do work but get deep satisfaction and joy from actual service of others, that's where all these chemicals in our brain start to really light up and get into the sweet spot of, it's just incredible when people are there. It's like, I'll say this too, when I have seen this and when I have lived in this environment, maybe the longest I could think of now is a week and a half at a time, there becomes a new phase in this group intelligence that I've just begun to start to understand, which is a telepathic and synchronistic reality phase, where you'll walk up to something and they'll say, I was just going to talk to you about, and the other person will finish the sentence, and then you'll say, oh, I have this extra thing, and right as that happens, someone's saying, I just was thinking I need that. And it's kind of it's a bit nonlinear to explain it, but I can say that I've seen it happen enough, and I've logged it enough to know that it really is something that can be unlocked through the collective field once you have these other basic layers figured out.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I love that, dude. What an interesting way to put it. And that's kind of how I see, the human species going. Once we get our shite together here, when we start, I see it at Burning Man, more or less. I've heard people that have challenging experiences at Burning Man, and I think it's, I'm sure it's possible, but it's a lot your own mirror too, right? A lot of people say I had a challenging experience. But if you're going around with, I have an amazing experience. I'm just dishing out love. I'm receiving love, and it's temporary and it's festival. And yours is permanent, which makes it extra special and unique. But you're really witnessing and you're having these experiences. So a lot of the times when people go to Burning Man, it's temporary, but they've had these experiences where the group is actually caring about them. And so when you go from, I think it's self-interest to other self to group interest, that's
Yeah,
when this telepathy in the field really starts to kick in,
that's
right?
it.
Because you're sending out a signal that's like, hey, dude, if you need me to help you, I got you, man, no problem.
Yeah,
Where, in the States, a lot of time, like, you can't even, if somebody gets hit by a car or something, you can't move them because you might get sued. Like, it's just so messed up. Like, it's so backwards, you know what I mean, to what we are as a species. Like, that is not okay. And like going in when I was in Vegas and doing some work there and speaking, they had all the billboards, and right, and it's just like, call here if you've had an accident, call here if
yeah,
blah blah blah, blah and you're hurt. You don't pay unless we win. Well, what is that saying? That, obviously the NLP and the unconscious message is try to sue everybody. Don't even worry about the money. Just give it a shot. Just sue your fellow man.
right.
Don't worry, we'll get you money. If you don't lose, if we lose, then you don't have to pay anything.
Yes,
Super messed up. So,
yes,
I've experienced these as well. You have, on a very small scale, you've got, twins that will have telepathy. They'll have, they'll
yes.
have synchronicity. So then you could go to families and then communities, right, and then the world. There's a couple ways that I want to go with this. I think that an important question, I think, would be, what have you learned from Marco Santi that you would like to see in cities, or you think that an individual like myself, being in a community, or someone listening that's in a big city, or is there any like principle from there or what you've just said that you might be able to apply in a bigger city?
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, there's a lot. So right now, I'm working on a project to turn Arcosanti into what you would call a typical type of smart city. And what that means is taking different sensors, so Internet of Things, if you're familiar with that, taking different Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and things that measure everything from foot traffic to temperature to water flow to electric usage, etc., and putting them around. And from there, these devices communicate data that can be shown in graphs and line graphs and bar graphs and pie charts. And you can even have things that are triggered based on the readings that those sensors are giving you. So you could, for instance, get text message if the water flow is over a certain amount for a certain duration. That way we know that a pipe hasn't burst or something like that. So when you
That's
start to
amazing.
think about,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
where your tech wizard, like, so beyond, like, this exists, and you can do it, and you're applying it in an amazing way. But continue. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
just tech
And so,
wizardry.
yeah, and the background, the tech part is like not even the exciting part, right? So like the tech part is like this is how we get the data. But once that data is shown, and anyone, for instance, we have a cafe here, which is rather large, so their footprint is something that we don't currently know compared to the other buildings because electricity and water just comes in and then it's just 1 meter. And when you start to get to that phase of what we were talking about before, of the individual identifying with the collective individual, so the city organism, the my body, the city body, one and the same, or the interrelationship is intertwined. And now you say, hey, look, here's the heartbeat of the city. Hey, look, here's how the digestive process of the city is working. Hey, look, here's how the lymphatic system of the city is working through graphs in real time. Your awareness, it goes way further in terms of understanding how we are all part of one superorganism here. Like we do have this hive mind capability. And also as like a very quick secondary conclusion after that, it's like, well, why are we using this much? Or why is this spike here? Why is this anomaly happening? So I think to answer your question, I look at it really like you could introduce many ways to bring this kind of telepathic potential into cities, but the easiest way is just through straight data. But when you take that straight data and you use it to increase the awareness of everyone, everyone now becomes more autonomous agents to make decisions that they are excited to see the collective impact. And that's the part that I think that we're missing in current cities, where, you know, emphasis, of course, is on private ownership and creating success within one narrow channel of one's life, but not knowing who your neighbors are, and, you know, all the woes of of typical first world society.
Man, that's super interesting. So you say you're in the process of getting this installed at Arco Santi?
Yeah, so we have some basic Internet of Things devices already set up to track flows of people. But right now, my partner is in the other room, and he just created a duplicative, basically a duplicative hard drive for these little microcomputers. So basically, all we do now is we take all the ones we have, put these hard drives in, put the sensors on, put them in different locations, and, you know, setting up one takes just as long as setting up 1 times 30 now, meaning it's a very rapid to scale process, and that's the next phase that we're at. And the other part, which is softer, right? So here's the other side to it, the power of knowledge. When certain types of knowledge is made publicly viewable, it opens up certain vulnerabilities, or maybe another way of saying it is it casts doubt on certain guiding fictions that have been assumptions maybe in the public eye, but have not actually been truthful. And what I would like to do as an immediate step is take all this data from all these devices of the vital symptoms of the city organism here and make it visible to everyone. Give it to any university that wants to come visit here, because there's a bunch of them, and all these eco groups that want to do experiments. But I remember I was talking with someone on the staff here, and they were saying, yeah, but we're actually not that efficient with water, because although we're in the desert, we have our own aquifer, we have our own water source, and, you know, we have a pool, an Olympic-sized swimming pool that we keep filled year-round. And we have reverse osmosis filters in the cafe because, you know, some people like water to be of the highest quality, but these reverse osmosis filters, for every 3 gallons that they filter, 2 of them go into the gray water system, and then 1 of them is drinkable. So 2 of them are essentially going to the lawn or not being used at all, eventually going into the Blackwater pond. So there becomes this softer discussion of, now we're actually creating this data. Can we use this data to increase the awareness of everyone, or do we really have to keep it siloed and have internal discussions about, does this make our image not look... and I don't mean this to say Arco Santi's image does not... Arco Santi is not trying to say that they are the most energy efficient, LEED certified experimental building project on the planet, but even then, you know, there's a tact to introducing new technologies so that it really feels empowering for everyone and not disempowering for someone that's invested in this being you know, very cutting edge for resource use. And so that's the step that we're at right now, is that kind of how far can we start to broadcast the information?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, to kind of get the insider information, because you are, as it says, an experimental city. You're experimenting with ideas, with technology, with information. You know, some of those ideas may not work out. Some of them might not be as perfect as you would hope they could be, but you're trying and you're doing something. And as you get this information, then it can be shared and scaled, right? But the first step is to experiment, to do that. So thanks for being there, and thanks for, you know, I know you have a lot of options. You're one smart cookie, and you could do a lot of different things, but you're choosing to do this, to be in this realm, because you see the effect, and you know that if you can sort something out there in that mini city environment, you can, like, oh, boop, boop, and then it can just fractal out and give it to the to the universities and everybody else. So thanks for that, man. That's amazing. So I guess I wanted to follow up in this question, because I want to hear your point of view on how do you see the cities of the future, like 2020, 2030? Like, do you see a rapid scale? Like, when is there going to be this big break? Do you ever think about the singularity? You know, where's your mind with all that stuff?
Well, it's interesting. I guess there's the what do I want to have happen, and then there's the what will most likely happen. So
Right.
I think I'm a bit cynical right now due to like the presidential election here in the U.S. and a lot of the kind of I'll say it like this. How about this? There's two dominant sectors in society, right? It's the public sector and the private sector. There's the government and there's the private industry. And what I hope will happen as technology allows access to grow exponentially for people, and internet coverage is continuing to expand throughout the world. It's my hope that the way that the data from all of these new edges of our networks will be collected and held is in the commons, which I put in a third category, right? So you have the commons, which is no one owns it. It's a spring in the middle of a forest in Poland. You have the private sector, which is the Poland spring that goes in and bottles it. And then you have the government, which raises their fist and says, you can't drive 100 miles per hour down the highway when you go to the spring to take it out and sell it to people. And in that example, I'm kind of expressing at the undertone of where I hope in the next 4 years, by 2020, the world population really makes some big leaps and bounds to create a much more universal state of access for getting our base needs met. And this is around making cooperatives that actually organize the commons and the information that's being transmitted about those commons. When we can say this is a new resource, Wikipedia is a resource that hasn't existed before, or this new cure that's been created is something that hasn't been existed before, rather than seeking simply to go into things like patenting it, or a corporation that is going to try and get the most extractive opportunity possible, or the government saying this is ours, no other government can know what the secret is. I hope that people will create the kind of legal foundation and then self-organize so that they can keep those things in the control of many. And I think that they will. It's already starting to happen. The technology is accelerating this. But assuming that all of that happens, obviously we're at a very big revolution in terms of how we share data online. The idea of the blockchain and being able to have a distributed ledger that, although it's been hacked, is supposed to be the most secure way for us to keep our data safe, means things that like open banking and cryptocurrencies, all the way through to commonly held resources and how townships can govern collectively, can be at a whole new level of transparency and inclusion that has never been possible. So yeah, I know I didn't talk about flying cars, but is that I could go into specifics of what it might look and feel like.
Yeah, all I want to go is to fly, but no, I love it, man, because my personality type is definitely head in the clouds. You know what I mean? And as a challenge for me, to know more about myself, it is understanding where we are, where I am practically. How can I create an efficient system to get a result, right? So yeah. You are a very good mix of both. So you can see the practicality side of it, and you also, I'm very sure that if it goes the positive way, flying cars are maybe a year or 2 year away when that switch turns on, then anything comes possible. But you're also aware that there are systems and things in place that prevent that. And for me, one thing that I was going to say about because I think the last 3 people I've interviewed, most of the people actually on the show have been Americans. The Trump, and I've talked to a few of them, and I had a really good perspective on it, because ever since I was a kid, it's just been nonsense. I had looked at it as nobody else sees that this is nonsense. And especially being Canadian, looking at your politics, it's the exact same as the Hunger Games. It is a bunch of bull crap. And you've got Coke fighting Pepsi, you've got Ford fighting Dodge, and behind it is the same guy that funds all the money and these presidential elections. There's money, and then you got people losing their mind and creating a battle, an illusionary battle of the mind, because this person's going to do it. But if you look at an alien perspective, and they look at it and you're okay, so this is supposed to be one of the most powerful countries in the world, and you have these 2 people. These are these are people who you get to choose. So for me, I love the fact that they're both interesting candidates. You know, I wouldn't even say like they're terrible people. They're just like, it's just so interesting. But you're looking at them, and so now you really know that you've got, like in South Park, they do it the best. It's you know, a douchebag versus have you seen that one? What is it? One's a giant douche, and one's a big turd. And they have to do the school election, and Stan's like, I'm not voting. Like, I'm not voting. Like, you know, I don't want either. And so now it's really mirroring to the masses. Like, hey, like, and this is what pisses me off so much, is that people haven't got to the point where they realize that politics are broken, and they've always been to serve money and big business and self-interest, which even all those people doing it, I you know, I'm not even saying that that's bad. I'm just saying that that's the thing. And so because we've wanted to acquire, now we're shifting to this group collective. And now it's the time where we can say, hey, look, it's not about fighting that thing. It's about solving it ourselves. Kind of like at Arco Santi. I think you mentioned that before, having your small collective. No one's coming in to come hook you up. Let's sort this out together. Let whoever wants to be elected, be elected. You know what I mean? And then just participate in what you want to participate in. Take care of your communities. Start ideas. You know what I mean? Like, look, there's been super powerful people in history. Gandhi, Martin Luther King. So many people have done amazing things by just taking a stand and like, this is it. And then people rally behind them. So I think that this is an amazing mirror for people to say, look, like, do you actually believe in the political system? Is this something that you want to support? Or as a people, can we think of something better? And what are the solutions that we need? So, you know, in that sense, you know, I wanted to mention that. And then, then talk about flying cars, talk about the possibilities, because the way that I see it is going to be both. I think that some people, you know, as this transition, I kind of see it as a more, you know, out there kind of guy, you know, like, you know, angels and like, you know, ascended consciousness and like tapping in, because you've had these little glimpses of these experiences where there is a collective, you're in an elevated state and you're like, what is going on? One of the prolonged ones I had was doing a really clean diet, no sugar, no salt, no meat, no dairy, no booze, like no nothing, you know what I mean? Raw vegetables, whatever. And I was meditating a ton. And the weird side effect, because my diet was, you know, okay, I was eating Delissio pizzas and all that stuff, but it was like a turning on. And I was like, it was a little bit like the limitless pill. And I was like, this is really interesting. I had no idea that I could get to this level. So then next thought, how many levels are there? When does it stop? And the only time that I can really get into this space is in meditation, when I leave myself. And by leaving myself, it's just quiet your mind for more than 10 seconds. But you know what I mean? So if you can quiet your mind for an hour, stuff comes in. That's, you know what I mean? You're getting, and you experience like, ooh, like, whoa, that's possible. And so I kind of see it as a very slow process. But what is possible if we work together? You know, what will the cities look like when we look at what's most important? You know, food, and then we've got, you know, the challenge, Monsanto, you know.
It's one of those beautiful. I'm getting an echo of myself, so maybe I'll mute when I'm talking and then I'll come back.
Okay, you're good over here.
Okay, so what's possible? To me, the major tipping point is the one that you talked about before, when the individual's consciousness begins to transition to the group consciousness as being equally valid. It's not saying the individual is supplanted for the group, but it's saying they're part of it. And what happens at that moment is exactly what you just articulated, which is you go from being the content itself, you go from the let me eat the pizza, to go to the context, the listener. And really, the whole idea of the 40-hour work week is the bullshit that has entrapped us in this, to think that our value is communicated through our doing versus our being. And when you start to say, well, if us walking around as freely autonomous agents, always listening for where there's a need in our community to come up, and then we just act, of course we would get everything done that has to happen in far less time, because we're walking around and our main job is actually listening. It's, I have something in the frontal lobe of my brain, let me now offload that. That way I can go back to listening and say, oh, it sounds like someone fell, let me go deal with that. Or, oh, I've never noticed this, but this is like a messy area. No one had to tell me to do that. It didn't have to go onto a list and we had a meeting about it and then other managers like critiqued it. It was, I'm awake, I care, and I'm in a state of emptiness, and because of that. So whether I think what you're saying is through the diet too is you found how to get past that threshold, and the more we have the context for more of us to be in that state and find ways for it to be supported. This is why having a strong commons is a really beneficial prerequisite. Then, wow, we're not even going to start to say what are the problems. We're not even going to start to say let's build a flying car. We're going to start to say things like, well, why would we need to build a flying car? What is the need that we're trying to meet? Like I'll say it like this: like people don't want the things; they want the benefits of those things. So there was an example. There's a really good book called Naked Value by one of the students of Buckminster Fuller, and they say basically people want the benefits, and if you can remove the amount of resources required to deliver those benefits, you'll have a more successful opportunity. And they use the example of let's say, for instance, you were in the lawnmower business. Is it what you're really doing, making lawnmowers, or are you delivering people the ability to have a lawn where they don't have grass that's really high? Well, if the benefit that they want is just to be able to walk without having their grass really high, well, then you don't have to invest in making blades that cut those grass. Maybe there's a more efficient way to do that. Or if your business is clean clothes, that's the benefit people want. You don't have to actually make washing machines as your business to do that. So in the future, as these new kind of paradigms start to be introduced of everything from like, I want to own a tiny house and live on the coast of California and change my neighbors every month because I just think the coast is beautiful, as that becomes more valuable than I have a mansion and a mortgage and 3 cars, and we become more receptive collectively to say my actual highest contribution to society is less about me being the one on the stage and more about me listening really closely to the people that are around me and finding ways to go where the need is. I think it's really who we are is going to evolve phenomenally quickly because everyone's uniqueness will start to be able to reach relevancy, to reach potency, to have a purpose much more easily now than you work your job and then on the side you pursue your passion and all that stuff. Let's defer heaven for later when our bank account lets us.
Yeah, man, that was beautifully said, brother. That was really amazing. And I love the perspective shift on it, right? And you won't need the flying car, right? It's so, yeah, I hear you, man. It's so sweet. So as a direct question then, without trying to sugarcoat it, what are the main, if you've got 3 to 5 blocks, what do you need to change in cities to create a world that is more collective, to shift people? What are the main things? Bam, bam, bam. We got to change this. We need to rethink it. We need, without, you don't have to get, just what are the things? Because you know them, or you at least are an expert and have a good idea.
Thank you. That's a good question. So maybe to compartmentalize into 3, I'll answer it in terms of mind, body, spirit, if that sounds all right.
If you want, man, you can get nuts. Up to you.
Okay, so let's say for instance that technology is a reflection of us, right? So technology is going to enhance our mind, body, and spirit capabilities as an individual and as a collective organism. So on the level of mind, I think that what's really required is the visibility of the needs and the resources of what's around us. So like what you were saying, earlier about what Airbnb and Uber are beginning in the private sector, when things like Slack, like real-time messaging, get combined with grassroots initiatives for people to go around, knock on all their neighbors' doors and make massive lists of what are the things that you need, tell us all the skills that you have, tell us the stories that you want to share, your capacities for what you want to learn. And then we stand back and we say, wow, if the 10,000 people in our neighborhood, holy shit, there's these trends, there's these clumps that we can leverage together that we never realized. That's a big one. Like Estonia is a really great example where the country was going to do some national cleanup. I think this was in like 2007, and it was going to cost $1 billion and take a year. And instead of that, they just did a grassroots organizing, and something like 60% of the people in the country cleaned up over the course of a weekend and did what was going to be $1 billion and take a year, just because engaging people on the level of their passion and their dreams being manifested collective is super powerful. So creating the needs list and real-time communicating of that is the mind aspect to me that I hope cities will start to get to with all these technologies. The body aspect, we already spoke about a bit also, which is the Internet of Things. Internet of Things is growing massively, and I've heard estimates saying by 2020, everything, everywhere from 30 to 80 billion devices will be connected to the internet through the Internet of Things. So, you know, many times over the population of people on the planet will have sensors and all these things that will be giving us data. And some of it is a little intense in that, like, you can have things in the street lights on all your different streets that turn on when you're walking by, and also help shape traffic based on traffic flows and things, and help people geoposition if there's abducted children. So some of it can go into like the conversation on privacy, but coming back to just what we're doing at ARCO of being able to say, hey, look, on Broadway in Manhattan, right now there are 300,000 kilowatts per second of electricity that are being used. And look, when they turned off the lights in Times Square for 15 minutes, that saved the energy equivalent of like half of the state of Delaware of what they use. Maybe the community might want to organize around this. So getting the data in the public sphere in a way that's really actionable, I think will naturally have this city organism start to develop an awareness of being more resource efficient. And then on the realm of spirit for technology in cities, 100% I think it's going to be augmented reality. You know, there's a kind of, I've heard in a few places that 2016 is going to be kind of a landmark year for deciding what gets critical mass, or what gets critical mass first, virtual reality or augmented reality. And you look at things like Pokemon Go, where people are having a collective experiences of awe. And a quick tangent, you know, I grew up outside of New York City, and someone posted a video the other day of, I don't know Pokemon, but one of these characters hatched on the edge of Central Park at like 11:30 on a Friday night. And you see someone with their smartphone in this video, all these people just start yelling. They're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And all of a sudden there was like 100 to 150 people with their phones up, walking and looking at this creature that doesn't actually exist, and like high-fiving each other, like, this is amazing. It was more profound to people, or it was akin to like when I saw baby sea turtles hatch like in Costa Rica or some shit. It was like, you know, this thing. And now that augmented reality is growing at this space, it's my hope that it won't just be used for first-person shooter games. It's my hope that augmented reality will be used to visualize the needs and resources, visualize the data from the body of the city organism, visualize different empathetic bridging opportunities for us with our community around us to break down that barrier of other in ways that we have been left out of the conversation, not because it hasn't been relevant, but because we've become so bombarded by all this other bullshit through our phones and through reducing who we are to stimulus response junkies, that now we're using the mechanism of the stimulus response junkie, but we're using it to bridge, you know, the otherness paradigm. So I think, yeah, augmented reality, databases of needs and resources controlled by the commons and Internet of Things is going to really, hopefully, tune our cities up to a better state.
Amazing comment, homie. That was awesome. So just because you are tech, just explain what augmented reality is, because not everybody's going to know that.
Oh, sure. So augmented reality is basically overlaying something that's not in a physical environment onto a physical environment. And typically, as opposed to virtual reality, which is totally a synthetic environment. So when you think of virtual reality, you think of putting on these goggles and you're on the surface of Mars. Augmented reality, a popular project had been Google Glass, for instance, where you're looking through the glass and then there's this extra data layer that's there. And usually the way augmented reality works now is, depending on your device, is it's connected to a gyroscope in your phone. So that way, let's say I'm looking through the camera of my phone and I see my friend standing there. But as I move the phone up and down, the augmented element almost acts as if it's stationary within that environment. So it really makes it feel as if it's almost like a physical object. Yeah.
Well, so you said something at the end there that was really interesting. So obviously, Pokemon is not, a tool for transcending, uh, using this technology. But you talked about the kind of instant I don't know how you phrased it, but you phrased it, very intelligently and next level. Instant gratification idea of, they're using augmented reality to play a game, to see a creature that doesn't exist, and they're all super stoked on it. How do you see that idea? Like again, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. How did you phrase it? And
Yes.
then how do you see using augmented reality to then be a catalyst of mental and spiritual growth? Because if you can tap into human nature in that way, and then kind of serve people, give them like a whole, judo switch where they think they're going one way, and then oh my god, and you just bring them to like, yeah, you can, your nature is instant gratification. I want to wake up and I want to eat some ice cream and go skateboarding, and but I've got other responsibilities. So that's
Yeah.
where it's balance, right? So it's got me. I bet you I would be like a Pokemoner, but I have different physical things. So tell me,
Pokemoner.
yeah, how do you see? What's that?
Pokemoner. I love that. That's a great word.
Yeah.
It's like a Jamaican Pokemon fan.
Seriously, man, I don't understand it.
So sure. That's a great question, and I think the phrase I used was stimulus response junkies, and this was something when I was studying a lot of hypnosis. This is a common thing, which is the idea that people are essentially walking around in a trance for most of their life, and it doesn't mean that it's a trance as in they're like a zombie, but it means that they are not in their awareness. They're operating based on a model, which is in their brain of how something is going to actually play out. Um, and I will come out and say I think all augmented reality is actually a spiritual experience. So I don't think that we have to even evolve Pokemon Go at all to get to that place, because whether you like it or not, you are actually having an experience of play with a stranger when you're doing something with augmented reality. Or actually, I'll say it like this: Pokemon is a shared experience. Other types of augmented reality can just be on your individual phone. But when you start to get into a state of play with a group of people, even if it's a first-person shooter game, which I don't like to admit, you are creating a bridge whereby there becomes a collective field that you are now calling forth like a kind of like a new shared reality. And even though, let's say World of Warcraft, for people in society that might have been like warriors hundreds of years ago, fighting, like with swords and things like that, that are now demonstrating leadership skills and group coordination skills and getting to test eye-hand coordination, even though it's a shooting experience, you actually are able to have transcendent moments within that. So I think that was kind of getting at what your question was of like, what would we have to do? But of course, we can go into doing things that are directly for creating greatest good and transcendent experiences. But I can tell you that literally everyone was acting like they were at Disney World in this video of Pokemon, and all the endorphins in their brain were lighting up as if they just put massive amounts of carbon in the atmosphere and saved $3,000 for a 5-day trip with their family. And it was actually only through walking down the street, and they got to meet their neighbor in the process. So, yeah, it's definitely a better
Huh.
step with AR.
Yeah, I definitely have more clarity on the way you rephrased it, and I love that stimulus response junkies. That's gold, man. Um, so okay, so you've got this. Yeah, so my first one, what was the shooting game? My buddy played it all the time, Halo. So that's augmented, right? Because yeah, it's augmented because I'm looking at the screen, so people around the world were playing Halo, having a group experience.
I
Am
would
I on the
call
right
that.
track here?
I no, like when I was referencing World of Warcraft, I wouldn't say that I was using that as an example just for a collective experience, but that's not augmented reality. Um, that was maybe not the best example, but I was just because I don't know of any
Okay,
actual augmented reality
that's
shooting games.
but that's like at the beginning, like that's almost like almost, it's not virtual reality, but it is a reality where it's an artificial reality, but we're playing it as a group. So now we have a community,
Yes,
which is
yes,
my point, which is important. So
yes.
you've got the Pokemon augmented reality, but it's a community, it's a game. So
Yes.
then you have this group peak experience. Now, most of the people, playing Pokemon, the kids, they're going to be younger mostly. I'm sure lots of older people playing too. Everybody's playing. Everybody's playing. So they might, like, I've had peak experiences through snowboarding, through skateboarding, through traveling. And so when you have group peak experiences, like at a festival like Burning Man, that's a group peak experience. They're amazing. And you can have them at Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins gets you all pumped up. You don't know your body can do this. Everybody's smiling and hugging, it's just like, it's hard to frown in that. So it's, again, a group peak experience. So when we have the Pokemon, and it's good because they're creating these things. So what if we were to think about it and be like, oh, okay, how can we have some sort of positive goal, some sort of positive oriented community, and then get that same level of endorphin peak experience, the same idea, but it matters a little bit more. Not that the Pokemons don't matter, I don't know what they're called, but like, something that, like, maybe like, I don't know, you get together and you figured out all the little old ladies in town, and they're all taken care of, people whose, husbands or wives have passed, and you, as a community, sort out through augmented reality game how to make sure they're all taken care of.
Totally.
What I mean? I don't know.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
That's
like, obviously you want to make it sexier than that, and how you make kids love that stuff, but that's the idea. Use it for something that matters, because then you have a real effect. And so if you could get, maybe you get him, like, cherries every time you deliver some stuff, and then if you get this whole bundle, and then there's magic augmented reality once you've got to a certain number or whatever. But interesting concept anyway.
That's exactly it. That when people start thinking like what you just said, and we start to use technology in that context, I think it's going to be a massive social change potential. And it's funny because although things like this are obvious, they're not pursued nearly as aggressively. And although, like, it can create a massive ripple, I went to an augmented reality talk in Los Angeles about 3 months ago, before we did like a large augmented experiment here. And it was exciting. There was going to be the new HoloLens demo, and there was a lot of architects that are talking about it, and people that are making music videos now, and et cetera, et cetera. And not a single person was talking about how augmented reality can be reused to do things like create world peace, or to do things like allocate resources more effectively and get civic engagement, and have communities be more effective and empathetic with each other. And at one point, a few comments popped up, one of which was saying that things like, actually they were saying, this is for virtual reality, but wouldn't it be interesting if virtual reality could solve different types of Middle Eastern issues, Middle Eastern conflicts around access to holy lands? Meaning, if, let's say, I am of a group that is not allowed into a holy land, what if there was a space that I can go enter that, and it's a simulation, but I can I can get there without the tension of needing to feel like I'll be killed, or things like this. And whether or not that's true, the larger answer that I got back was, it's not profitable, and we'll get there. But like, really, the new Eminem music video, and I'd watched one by I forget the artist's name now, but it was like a kind of a hip hop artist, and it was like the new virtual reality experience with this thing called a sub pack, which makes it's like a personal subwoofer that vibrates, and it's footage of like missiles hitting buildings and like massive apocalyptic scenes in a city, and to be using the cutting edge technology to help us better envision our nightmare scenario is, I can only think it's a good thing, because it's hopefully getting all this out of our system now. Hopefully what we'll do is we'll see this and say, great, like that's how we can create a more accurate version of hell. Got it. Like, it's blasé now. We did that in 2016 and 2018, and now what can we use for maximum benefit of good? And I think also things will get that way, because just the nature of technology is, for every proprietary corporation-owned technology that becomes really viable to people on a communal scale, usually there will be like open source projects to try and recreate things like that, which then, by being open source, it can be taken in all different ways. So even if AR hasn't reached kind of like super easy open source interfacing yet, I hope that people eventually will get their heads from out their asses for, you know, the massive positive impacts that this stuff can have.
Totally, man. Yeah, another interesting point. It is all about money, right? And I think that it's up to the people that are living here. You know, you're 32, right? Are we the same age?
32, yeah.
Yeah, 32. So the hands of the money is in the old people right now, but we've got young tech guys coming up in 20s, 15, even sometimes 25. They got all kinds of millions of dollars. You know, once we start reconsidering where to put and allocate those funds, and put them towards ideas like this, knowing that, you know, the old system has served us to a degree, but we're definitely in a space now where it's super important that you know, it's not like you know, the world is like in a bad spot and it's going to be bad. It's like, no, we really need to look at what resources we have, how we're treating each other. You know, the fact that how I got into all kinds of conspiracy stuff. I was like, how do we still have war? Like, how is this happening? Like, you know, we haven't sorted out, you know, I'm not allowed to hit my sister or my brother because, you know, it's just not allowed. And I know that that's, you know, not cool. So how are we murdering each other? And then if you shoot somebody, then you go to jail. But if you just do a nice bomb and just blow up a bunch, then you're cool. So,
Yep.
you know, as a humanity, once we start to put our priorities and this is what I think the shift is. This is what I think the 2012 thing was a change to above 50% service to others, where before it'd be like 50, 60, 80, 90% service to self. What's mine is mine. You know, do whatever I got to do to get more. You know what I mean? Stomp that guy, bigger house. And now that whole 2012 thing, this energetic thing, is like more of us are like, okay, it's not just about that. It's also about the others. So I can take care of myself, but now how can I work with my fellow man? And we take all these technologies and use them for good, right? And what you're talking about is so interesting and so amazing. And yeah, like technology for peace. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
I have a question for you. So you just said, you know, it's all about the money, and that's why some of these things haven't reached more altruistic. Some of these altruistic projects haven't reached tipping points, and it makes me think like, well, you're an expert in crowdfunding. Do you know what the average age is of the people that are running and having successful crowdfunding campaigns? Is it much younger than your typical like business CEO and stuff like that?
I think I think most crowdfunding is in a tech space, but you're doing it with artists. Like every single person now is using it, right? You can do it to write a book. You know, you want to do a book launch, but a lot of it is tech and just ideas, right? So usually younger, because you know it's a newer technology. So I would think, you know, between 20 and 30 would be you know, they get the idea. You know, they're in Silicon Valley, and a lot of these people are so smart. So I think that's the age. And as the, you know, the older generations that have this wealth, this generational wealth, start to put it towards conscious ideas. So it's up to us as a generational or as a person. I don't know if you're 19, 20, you know, if you've got an idea and, you know, 30 and you want to rethink things, what would you do if you had one chance? What would you do, you know, if you could do something that mattered, and start to plant that seed and grow it? And I believe that support is coming, you know what I mean? And that's one of those things, if you have a good conscious idea, then you can look at crowdfunding as a viable, real option to get support for your idea. And that's where this whole group collective comes in, because now we can start to wake up and look. And I was going to say something about so I haven't seen that music video, but I will. And you studying hypnosis, I've studied hypnosis. It's super simple stuff. If I say, don't imagine a black cat, you probably do. You know, try not to think of the American flag. Seeds go in. So, you know, I think, and I'm very confident in this statement, that media has been used since, you know, the beginning to plant seeds into the general consciousness. TV is very different in USA than it is in Europe. You know, if you travel a lot, you know this. So everybody's got their own agendas in there. So you cannot not, once I tell you to have the black cat, it's in there, whether you like it or not. So if you're continually looking at this, doomsday scenario, and every single movie that you're watching is, the foreign enemy, the foreign enemy, the foreign enemy. Well, it's really easy to create a real life foreign enemy. It's, it's called priming the mind, which you know about, right? Plant the seed first. Oh, the foreign enemy, I'm familiar with it. So then it slips in easier. So if we could change, and if we could change all of that media, these music videos, what we put on TV, Fox News, hooray for Fox News for just being so amazingly comically terrible from a Canadian perspective. It's the best. Like the Trues with Russell Brand is so good. I just was like, you this? You believe this? Yeah, okay, all right. You know what I mean? Maybe it is real. Maybe it's real, and I'm out to lunch. I don't know, but it's. Right, I don't know. I'm open to whatever, man. But it seems interesting to me. But if we now take all these ideas and these movies and these movements and these things, and we switch it to what the world could be, you're looking at city. Every movie is like, oh, this is the beautiful city after all the crap, right? So if we're like, hey, we just start seeding consciousness, community, collaboration, humanity working together. Then all that seed, and then also to what happens, and this is as going deep with Shore the other day about this. I think I was talking to him, but as I'm receiving the input, right? Yep. My mind, because I think this whole life is a virtual reality, you're then projecting it back out, right? So every time I'm watching this movie and I'm watching CNN, to make sense of it, I energetically have to re-put it back out. And that's why in Buddhism, they're really adamant about mental nutriments. What are you putting in? Because it all affects you.
Absolutely.
That's my rant. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. When the context is set correctly, all the content can just naturally start to nourish us. It's like it's like when you're getting pulled over by a police officer and you're scared, and meanwhile you didn't do anything. It's just by nature of the fact that that's a cop and they're pulling you over, and there's a certain context that's set up. When the context is there's someone that we have to bomb overseas, regardless of any of the specifics that's happening in the moment, you will feel fear when regarding that other. And yeah, part of me is very much in alignment on thinking that the solution is giving other seeds, like the positive seeds that you're saying. It's giving a more utopian model. But I've been, just through my own first person kind of observation of what's been happening at ARCO, I'll share a little bit on this. So here we have a workshop that is a 5-week long process where people kind of learn the culture, they learn the history, and then they become participants in carrying the larger vision forward. And it was said in a class I taught yesterday to the current workshop that there was a lot of redundancy in teaching the history of the past, and everyone's story was a little bit different. So there's lots of people that have been here for 40 years, and they'll say, oh yeah, and this happened, but they'll change a detail, something will be exaggerated, something will be dropped. And one of the workshoppers said to me, it's great that there's so much thinking of the past, but what about where you're going? And I just sighed, because that's an equally saturated spot, in that anyone that's lived here at any point, whether it's for 40 years or even for a week, has some sort of a dream about what this place can be. And when you start to get everyone around together, it's great in that you can really engage people, but more often than not, people become jaded because they say, oh, we've tried that already, or sure, that sounds like a great idea, but you need way more people to do that than you're saying, so it's not realistic. And you kind of get this this bittersweet future looking too. And that's why for me now, where I've kind of come in my process of learning is, I started as a filmmaker, and my main goals with filmmaking was to give that picture of what was possible, to create like a movie like Avatar, where it's like, oh, there's an indigenous species, and that indigenous species is connected to the planet, and this sort of stuff. But really, more than ever now, what I'm seeing is just creating awareness of what's happening in the now moment, which is what you're doing through these podcasts, which is what I'm doing through these sensors that are measuring utility use and people flow in cities. From there, we actually get the information so that when we have those dreams of the future, there's a trajectory. This is where we are now, and based on this kind of history, we can now make a prediction and now move towards that. And that's what I'm really excited about recently. Like, I've been around artists for decades. Ideas are fun, but ultimately can be depleting if it's something stays in the idea phase for too long. So how can we increase our awareness of what's happening right now and use that so that the group is naturally empowered to solve its own issues and to say, well, why does that? To question itself, to constantly reinvent itself, to have power allocations always be temporary and then have it be reabsorbed into the collective, and then power and opportunity be given out when there's the correct match. So, yeah, that's my rant.
Yeah. Nice.
I got you.
Yeah, cool. No, I love that one, man. It's so powerful because your point was what's happening in the now moment and recording the now moment. And that's all we ever have is the now, now, doesn't stop. So, if you're good now and you're fulfilled now and you're whole now, you can be because you don't need anything else to have that, you know what I mean? Or, the planet's doing its thing. But with this measuring of data, now we're taking kind of Zen, Eastern philosophy of being in the moment with modern technology. And one of the ideas that I've had, and I'm sure that somebody will be able to invent this probably tomorrow if they want, I don't know, but an application or some sort of thing that projected your thoughts. So most people, like you said, are kind of going around in the daze, and they are like, if you wake up and the first thing that you do is you go and you get your coffee and you're just thinking, and you don't have clear space. That's why meditation and learning to clear your mind is so important. You could be a lot of people, like, and a lot of athletes I've seen too, and I've spoken to a lot of athletes, a lot of coaches, where almost this, feeling of wanting to be good enough is what drove them to be an amazing athlete. But then they missed, you're like, oh my God, I never really looked within and thought, like, you could do the same thing and be an amazing athlete, but they didn't recognize where the drive was, where the drive was coming from, to be noticed and to be, to achieve and all that kind of stuff, not really a core fundamental. So, and our thoughts create our reality. The way that I kind of had a download of the way that I see it is every thought you think is like a little shot of Play-Doh, right? And it's just shooting, hit my own ear, shooting out into existence, right? So if I'm thinking, like, consider, it's just boom, 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 and it's just kind of being shot into the ether. And eventually, if I have enough of those thought forms, it's going to manifest. You know what I mean? And the fear the bigger shot, right? So my mind is just creating my reality. So I might see it in a day or in a week or in a month, but I'm shooting Play-Doh shots. So I bet you with your technology, you could test it. Well, you have someone like you, because I'd not be able to figure this out. If it could monitor your daily thoughts, then categorize them. This spent in fear. This is about worry here. This was stressing about money. And you look and you go through your week, and like 90% of the time you're stressing about money for like what, 5 years, like 10 years, 20 years, like, but you're still alive the whole time. So you could do that same thing and not stress about money at the exact same time.
That
right?
would be
It's so
stuff like that would totally just crack someone's paradigm if they were to say, wow, 90% of my last week was worrying about this thing that actually wasn't helped at all through me doing that. The thing that I think that you were saying before is it's the Buddhist side, which is this kind of letting go of your ideas, but then what technology brings is objectivity. Of course, something is never truly objective, but it's saying there's a number to this and this was measured without my own biases being inserted. If you do that for your thoughts, that would be that'd be a game changer for sure.
Yeah, man. Open to the information, and the more information that we have, the more we can make better choices based on the information that we have, and it's a really powerful thing. I just wanted to. I was gonna get. What are your top 3 books? You have like a top 3 book? I'm sure you've read some interesting stuff.
Sure. For like just in general, you're saying?
Yeah, maybe personal. If you just got a list, it could be like a checklist, could be whatever you feel, man.
Sure. Yeah, number 1 is the Tao. Number 2 would be probably Book of Secrets by Osho. Are you familiar with that one?
Yep. I
Yeah,
haven't read it though. I know of it. I've read a few of his books, and somehow that one wasn't on the radar. I actually came across him in Nepal when I was meditating with monks. Someone's like, "Oh, I just came from India. Like, Osho?" I was like, "No, I don't." So I got 2, but not that one. How is it? Good?
Yeah, this one is quite interesting because it's not Osho. Well, it is Osho being Osho, but it's less him talking about like courage or a specific topic, and it's more saying that the core of every spiritual pursuit has been transformation, and it's possible to condense all these different processes of transformation that every religion has ever chosen into really a few pages each, and then from there you can just read through the core. If you strip away all the stories about Jesus, you just get to the core transformative scientific practice of Christianity in 3 pages, or in Mahayana Buddhism in 3 pages, or in Jainism. And it's like, it doesn't really matter what resonates with you. It doesn't matter that you read the whole book, but having that type of menu, that type of spectrum to then say, you know what, I feel like I need to connect with myself. I feel like I need to be guided by something that I'm unable to see right now, but it's itching at me. It kind of gives like a many entry points to find the right vehicle for that. So I love that one. Um,
Um,
that's I'd say probably Be Here Now was number 3 for me. That was it came at a really important time where I was kind of moving beyond psychedelic as the means for, or as the main means for consciousness study. So yeah.
Amazing, dude. I love it. You named three amazing, spiritual books, awareness books, consciousness books, and you're just a tech ninja. So I love that. I love the balance. Um, Man, it's been great having you on. Is there anything else that you wanted to chat about before we head off? Is there something that you wish that I asked you that, you want to go deeper in, or anything?
Cheers. Let me just see. I had a few things here in my notes, and there's just one that I think is coming up now. Um, okay, so I think just a phrase I've been thinking about that I'll have as a kind of as a final thought is fuck legacy. Um, I find concepts on I find ideas like legacy to be the driven by that thing that you were talking about recently of when an extreme athlete is doing something to an extreme level, but they don't always realize what the underpinnings are coming from. Is it coming from trying to feel complete, trying to feel adequate, or is it coming from like a genuine renaissance moment, or a genuine deep connection with themselves where their own inner journey is guiding enrichment holistically? And one thing that I see happen really often, and this is just my opinion, is that when we are not fully in deeper connection with our own impermanence, the fact that we will die, and not only being aware of that, but almost being grateful for that, because that's part of this larger cycle that happens. Or when we have feelings that we're not enough and we need to leave some sort of mark in a formal way. I've heard the term legacy, and if not through that word, that energy in all multiple forms kind of creep in. And on very high functional teams is where I like to work most, and this is one of the ones that's the hardest to pin down, or it's the one that takes more work than others to identify how pursuit of legacy by the individual can actually hold back the collective. But in a nutshell, I think there's just to summarize it, um, I think as people that are impermanent, we naturally want to transcend space and time. We want to have our impact go beyond our our immediate family that we interact with every day. We want to go beyond our town. We want to impact people on the other side of the world. But if that's coming from this perspective of wanting to leave a legacy for your namesake, I think it always is subtly disempowering for the other people that might follow your energy, but in their own way. And the true capability of someone that leads is enabling everyone else around them to also be their own leader. So my final closing thought is by being in the moment, and by being really, really potent with the inner battle that one's fighting, and using the data around you to make decisions that are real in your environment, a legacy will naturally be created. But to focus on it for one's own mission, it starts a path that slows things down. So yeah, that was probably the only other thing on my mind to talk about. And also, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that too, if anything comes up, or if you've observed
Yeah, no, I
similar or
definitely
different
wanted to
things.
comment. Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. Well, a lot of what you're saying really comes back to being in the moment. So what like when you're saying you're defining legacy is like, for me, Matt Belair, are you saying an individual legacy or a business legacy? So it could be Zen athlete and as I perceive Zen athlete or something like that. And so I would have this vision and move forward and just don't care because I'm trying to get to this one aim that I've created for myself.
Hmm.
Is that in the
Hmm.
sense that you mean it?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so, yeah, totally. So I see that in the biggest flaw is the lack of adaptation and awareness and being present.
That's
And
it.
so, those are the fundamental things, connection to self and source. And that's where, all of life is in the present. So if you can have that, you're letting the legacy take care of itself.
Yes.
And I think in saying that you have this idea that you want to create so badly, but all of a sudden, if you create this idea, you're gonna wipe out this species. We have the last ducks on the planet. Like, nah, I got to do this. You know what I mean? And so, yeah,
Yes.
you can pervert your original uh, intention by not being adaptive and not being aware of your impact of for yourself, for your friends, for your family, for others in the planet. So I think that's an extremely valuable point, and I
Cheers,
thank
brother.
you for sharing that.
Yes, thank
It's
you for
awesome.
affirming. It's great to talk to
Yeah,
you,
no,
as always.
yeah, dude, it's all been gold, dude. Just oh, dude, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find more about you?
So my personal website is Complete Planet. So it's COMPLETEPLA.net, and that comes back to the desire to create a peaceful planetary society and control systems. Um, Also, I misspoke earlier. The website for AnyShare is actually ANYSHA.RE. So check me out through either one of those. Or if you happen to want to take a trip to the desert, I'm in Arcosanti, Arizona, and in a wonderful little experimental micro city. So that's where I'm at.
Amazing, dude. Yeah, I do. If somebody comes and visits you from this podcast, man, I will just be so pleased. It's Argo Santi. So it's such a special experience. You even have an Airbnb going there. It's
We
yeah,
do.
it's unlike anywhere I've ever been, man. It's super cool. So thanks so much again for coming on. We'll have to do this again. There's so much more in there, but I appreciate you. Thank you for all the work. I know all the work you're doing over there, and I know how pure and amazing your intentions are and where you're putting your focus. So thank you on behalf of humanity for being an awesome man.
Deep gratitude, brother. You're very welcome.
Peace, my man. We'll talk soon.
Peace.
Just wait for it.